have done so well you've done so well for yourself, for the country, and then for the globe. In what ways, having reached these giant strides, in what ways can teachers take on leadership roles in and beyond their classroom to influence positive change within the education sector? Again, with your experience and exposure, what way would you advise teachers to take on leadership roles in and beyond the classroom to influence positive change in the educational system in Nigeria and the globe at large? Dr.
Okay.
Toyin, over to
Yes.
you. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So good morning once again, everyone. It's such a great pleasure to be here, and I'm sure that we can all hear me loudly. And it's always a great opportunity for me to speak to educators around the world. So the first thing is an average educator out there must first see themselves as a leader. It all starts with the mindset, right? So in the last couple of days, I have been reading a book by Stephen Covey, which has to do with the leader in me. So I just wanted to show us how it looks like. Yeah. So I got this book almost about 13,000 on Amazon, and actually on how to ensure that students across different classes, across different ages, across different spectrum actually take on leadership roles, right? And there was something I was reading this morning that was very profound. I always love to share, like they would say, as they hot. So I was reading something very profound this morning, and I was literally blown away. It was talking about how can we, actually help students to how can we actually share leadership across the school spectrum. And then he says, number one, we have to first accept that mindset that we all are leaders. We all have the capacity to lead, but none. Sorry, we all have the potential to lead. However, not every one of us have the capacity to lead. So leadership is actually a skill that can be built and can be developed. So number one, they have to have that mindset. Number two, they must be willing to take up leadership skills. And I have a best-selling book titled Personal Leadership for Educators. It has sold over 1,000 copies, and this is a book I would like to recommend to everybody on this call. If you have not read that book, you need to read that book because I can't share everything that I know on this short call. And he mentioned three things. The first thing he said is that, first off, accept and embrace leadership roles. Um, don't see leadership as it is a burden, kind of, but see it first as a sense of responsibility, as a sense of building your own capacity. Then number two, you need to be open-minded and value other people's opinion. Yes, you may not agree with everything everybody has to say, but you can be open-minded enough to at least listen. And then, of course, by that, you are able to also influence other people with your own opinions. And then number three, you have to
Thank you.
find your
Okay.
voice. How do you find your voice as an educator? You need to identify that special thing about you that nobody does as exceptionally as you do, right? You need to be able to find your own strength, find your uniqueness, find your unique abilities, find your unique qualities. And this is one of the things that we do on our mentoring program, which we actually started yesterday, but you can still join in. We have about 12 psychometric tests that will help to, help you develop your capacity even as an educator. And then the truth is, if you are able to develop your leadership quotient as an educator, what happens is the fact that you will geometrically be able to influence more profiles, do a lot more for yourself, and do a lot more for our world. So I hope I've been able to answer that question quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so kindly, ma'am. Thank you so kindly. Yes, please. There were a few things that we should take note of. Dr. Toyin mentioned that we should see ourselves as leaders and we should see leadership as a responsibility other than a burden, right? And then we should have an open mind because you cannot expect a change by doing the same thing repeatedly. Thank you so kindly, ma'am. So we're moving on to our third speaker. And so, how can educators build a lasting legacy? Thank you.
Wow. So the first thing is the first challenge a lot of educators have, right, is the fact that They see their profession as a stopgap. For as long as you see education or being in the education sector as a stopgap, it's going to be very difficult for you to build a brand, right? And then when it comes to, I love the word build because it is not overnight, right? It is something that is long term. There's a principle I like to share. It's called the law of long-term perspective, and it says the farther you can plan, the higher you will go, and the faster you can reach there. So I'm going to use myself as an hypothetical example. When I got to discover that teaching was, in fact, my top gift, right? I discovered that I had four gifts, but teaching was number one, followed by leadership, followed by administration and exaltation. So what did I do? I made up my mind to say, since these are my areas of strength and my areas of natural gifting, I decided to focus on those areas and begin to build a lot more capacity. So the first thing is you have to embrace the profession. You have to love the profession. I said something on my status 2 days ago. I said people rarely succeed whenever they do what they don't like, but people oftentimes succeed whenever they do what they love or what they like. So it's first of all having to embrace the profession and seeing it as something that they are ready to invest their time, invest their effort, invest their energy, invest their resources. That is very, very key because a lot of educators love these things. I'm not saying these things are bad, but I want to encourage that. I mean, this year alone, I've invested close to 2 million on my personal and professional development. I'm sure some people say, oh, it's because you have the money, but hey, no. I remember way back in 2010, I was already paying for courses as high as 50, 60,000 way back then. I remember even how I got my computer proficiency skill was then I think I was earning about 20,000 thereabouts, and my computer class I had to pay like 10,000. So even though as at the time when I had little resources, I was ready to invest and go all the way. So now that I even have much more resources, I don't even want to tell you how much I had to spend for my doctoral degree because I actually earned it from United States of America. I know in that case I had to pay in dollars, right? So that law of love perspective matters a lot. And then you must also love what you're doing. Then number three is your consistency. I see a lot of people come on social media, they start, the initial brand, and then they start building their brand. But over time, you know, they become nowhere to be found. By the grace of God, I've been able to build my consistency. I think the first time I started working on my social media and public visibility was way back in 2012. Until this morning, we still shared some content and stuff in social media. This is because if you lack consistency, you are not going to be able to sustain that brand. Then, of course, you must have an overall vision. What is your why? Why are you doing what you're doing? So for us at Corfish Transformational Academy Limited, I do mention that our why we exist is very simple. Why we exist is simply to actually bring about simplistic, futuristic, and solution-oriented products and services to whoever comes in touch with us. And why, because we don't want people to have to reinvent the wheel. We don't want them to have to learn from their mistakes. We don't want them to have to get started from the scratch. And then our vision is very simple. It's to actually catalyze positive transformation in the lives of individuals and organizations. So it's
Amazing.
clear. Our why is clear. I mean, you're going to ask me this question, but I'm able to succinctly articulate it because this is what has helped us over time. Even when we had to face challenges, running business in Nigeria is tough. I don't need to tell us. Even when we had to face challenges, even when things didn't go the way we planned, our why has been our anchor, our ruler, our compass over the years. So I hope I've been able
Thank you
to
so
share.
kindly. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. So, dear educators such as myself, we need to learn to work in the long term perspective. Do not just do that for that time and not sustain it. It has to be consistent, it has to be sustainable, right? And then you are skill, not something you just do for the meantime, right? So, thank you so kindly. So thank you so kindly, ma'am, for that amazing, amazing contribution. Do you envision the future of education, considering the
Mm.
increasing role of technology, cultural relevance, and localized approaches in shaping learning experiences? So, how do you envisage the future of education, especially in Nigeria?
So I don't know why you asked me this question, but then I think uh, I think probably because somehow I've been positioned to always see ahead, right? And then I would like to read a quote from I think Sir Ken Robinson. I read it sometime I think last week, and I was literally blown away. Sincerely, this book has been a a very insightful experience for me. I think I started reading it sometimes last week, and I I couldn't just I couldn't just get over it. And is to simply capture what the future of education should be like. So I guess this question is actually very, very relevant for such a time as this. So it's still in the book, The Leader in Me, and I think I'm so privileged to have just brought it along with me. Though I was reading in the car on my way here, and there was something that Robson said that was very instructive. If you don't follow him on Twitter and on other social media handles, I want to encourage you to do so. So let me just quickly read it. It says, the fact is that given the challenges we face, education doesn't need to be reformed. It needs to be transformed. The key to this transformation is not to standardize education, but to personalize it, to build achievements on discovering the individual talents of each child, to put students in an environment where they want to learn, where they love to learn, and where they can naturally discover their true passions and potential. Hmm. So, like I said again, it was by Sir Ken Robson, and that I try to think through every single statement that he made in that in that short paragraph. Maybe I should read it again. Would you mind me reading it again? Because
No,
I
I
don't want
think
I want to
we can just continue. Yes, ma'am.
because for every single word he said there is the fact that yes, we can't remove the fact that they are facing a lot of challenges, like Mr. Adiako has mentioned. But then we should be looking at not just education reformation, but educational transformation. And he said the key to do this is not through our standardized education, which we see already. So the future of education has more to do with personalizing education, building achievements, and ensuring that you know um, each child's potential, each child's talent, each child's gifting is being discovered. And then, of course, to put children in an environment where they want to learn, where they love to learn. And when we are talking about environment, please, I don't want those on the call to just be limited to the physical environment. Learning environment is all encompassing spiritual growth, psychosocial, mental, intellectual. We consider the emotional, we consider the social, we consider the holistic environment where a child will thrive, not just survive, but will thrive. And then where they are able to naturally discover their true potentials and their true passion. So one of the things that actually have been a distinguishing factor for me as a speaker, as a panelist, and anything that I do in education is because I have come to a place of discovery of my potential and of course passionate about everything that I do. So when I'm talking, there is a force, there is a power backing my words. I'm not just speaking out of the surface. I'm not just talking, but every single word is being intentionally articulated in such a way that it brings about the kind of future that we desire in the world of education. Thank you.
Thank you so kindly, ma'am. Thank you for this mind-blowing session. And I must admit, you're well read. Yes. Well, so we noticed you were referring to lots of books, not
Yes,
just books, but also experiences, exposure. It shows that you're a
exactly.
meticulous person and you're attentive to learn and grow. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing this wealth of experience with us. Thank you. And this further
Awesome.
betrays the fact that Mr. Adeko mentioned when he said you were talking about schools, the school system should not just be reformed, but also transformed. He mentioned as well that we should introduce soft skills that makes the children ready, the scholars rather, ready for the future. Thank you so kindly, ma'am. So we're moving, yes,
Yes.
please, to make
So
attempts on the
picking,
question.
picking up from where Dr. came at um, stop, the first thing I would like to say is, as a leader, you have to be proactive. Um, it's important that you anticipate problems. Problems will surely come. In fact, I can't imagine a life without problem solving because that's what makes the wealthy, right? The amount of problems you're able to solve determines the amount of wealth and resources that you're going to have at your disposal. So the first thing I'd like to say is, can you do a critical analysis of your risk, of the challenges before they do come? Now, I'm not saying that when you do that, everything will happen. There are still going to be emergencies. So that's where I want to borrow from what Dr. Akima said, that even when the challenges come, you know, um, be assured in yourself that you can solve the problem. But one thing that will make you assured is that you are consistently growing yourself as a leader. You are consistently filling up your problem solving bank. You don't wait for when everything has turned into that. So, for example, nobody is putting me under pressure to read this book, right? But I read all year round because I never can tell when I will need to draw out knowledge, when I will need to draw out wisdom, when I need to draw out capacity, when I need to draw out capability when it's needed. And that is why for every team that I've found myself, I have become someone that is indispensable because I always, and by the grace of God, I accrue to the grace of God, but at the same time, I am I am aware that I have to consistently drop something here every single day, right? So as a leader, how often and how much are you building your capacity for the raining days
Hmm.
ahead, right?
Wow.
That's the question you need to ask yourself. And then
Thank
finally,
you.
finally, how much are you building your team? Because a lot of us as leaders, we grow in isolation. And that is, we are doing a lot of injustice to ourselves. How much are you growing your staff when there are no problems? Do you have a system whereby you have been able to create the fact that whether you like it or not, as long as you're working on the team, you don't have a choice. Growth must be
Wow.
intentional because
Thank
growth
you
is not
so kindly,
automatic.
ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so kindly, ma'am. What stood out for me, do not grow in isolation. Grow your team as well. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. We're moving on to our third panelist.